All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another webinar hosted by us, CVVC and CB Labs. My name is Gideon Greaves, and I'm the Managing Director here at CVVC Africa. Today, we've got a really exciting webinar. Joining us is Dale Russell, who is the Director at Moore Johannesburg in the Blockchain and Digital Assets Division, and then Commercial Director at Fuel to Fly, Adam Sack, is going to be joining us. And the whole theme today is a discussion around mistakes that we have endured in our entrepreneurial and professional careers, how we can learn from each other, what it's like working in a small business, and particularly in a niche emerging industry and emerging technology like blockchain and crypto. What are the pros? What are the cons? What can we learn from each other? And multiple other things that we'll have a candid and fluid chat with over the next hour or so. From CVVC's point of view and from my personal point of view, I can speak to challenge that I faced in a startup that I ran once upon a time in the food tech space. And at that stage, the market in South Africa was, from a venture capital perspective, was very immature. And there wasn't a lot of venture capital around. That being said, you wanted to seize the moments when you did get the opportunity to, sit across a venture capitalist in a boardroom and get the chance to pitch your idea or your startup opportunity to them. And I think the learning that I certainly have faced from going through that experience and now being on the other side of the curtain, having the opportunity to run a venture capital fund, investing into entrepreneurs and to startups, is that as a startup and as an entrepreneur that's pursuing something new and building a new product, I think there's two customers that you essentially have in the early stages of your business. The one is your customer that you're marketing your service and your product to. The second one is the investors that come into your business. And of course, this applies specifically to startups that are pursuing the venture capital journey. And for me, that isn't necessarily the wish for every entrepreneur. Some entrepreneurs want to focus on the journey of launching an SME where it maintains its sort of family-run business narrative and doesn't necessarily need that explosive growth and venture capital funding. But for me, what was an important lesson for me is to really understand venture capitalists and to understand exactly what they are looking for. And I feel if I was given the opportunity again to go back into an entrepreneurial journey, I would understand how better to structure a narrative and a pitch that venture capitalists can process and understand, and that speaks to them. Because at the end of the day, VCs are financial products, and we have a set of LPs or investors that have allocated capital to us to invest on behalf of them, and we need to provide a return to them. And there's a certain structure and a certain recipe that we look for on the back of that. So in summary, I think the learning there for me is to really understand the venture capital model. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to pitch to VCs in that process of trying to raise capital for your startup. But there's a lot of other things that we're going to be chatting about in this webinar, but I'd like to now cross over and hand over to Dale Russell from Moore, who's the lead sponsor here of the webinar. We've been excited to work with Dale over the past year amongst various activities, and to see how passionate and interested you've been in this emerging asset and this emerging technology in the services space, going through to get working on the CB Summit together and various other initiatives. So Dale, over to you to give us some insights as to what you've learned in your journey.
Awesome, thanks Gideon, and yeah, thanks to CVVC for having us today. And so as he alluded to, I'm a director at Moore specifically focused on blockchain and digital assets. And my journey or the why behind this business was in order for an emerging asset class or an emerging industry or a revolution to take place is that you need a bridge or someone to facilitate the bridge of trust. And essentially, professional services is an important role, regardless of you know people's view on liking or disliking the fact of auditors and the like. We believe that this market neutral sort of positioning in a volatile type industry is an important role to play to drive customer confidence, to bring adoption, and someone has to hold that baton. And essentially, what we are building at Moa is a professional services business which inherently provides the same services or pillars of service that any firm or accounting professional services firm would deliver, just tailored with tools and technology and knowledge that is specific to the nuances of this industry, so that we can drive and help foster this movement. And so I'm excited to have a chat with Adam today from Field to Fly. He'll be joining us, and we'll be sharing some fun stories, some mistakes we've learned from, a few lessons to learn, and the key takeaways is that these are avoidable mistakes that some of you in the audience may be able to take away and avoid making the same mistakes. So yeah, I'd like to hand over to Adam to introduce himself, and I look forward to the panel that we're about to have.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate that. And I just want to thank Gideon and Stacey at the folks at CVC and CV Labs for having us. It's great to bring everyone together into a format where we can learn from each other and learn from our mistakes. And what's been so interesting to me over this process is even though Dale and myself come from completely different backgrounds and we work in completely different environments, we've both been involved in entrepreneurial spaces and startups, and we've actually both had quite similar experiences and lessons. And that certainly means that the folk around here at the webinar, there's definitely something for you, and you're probably going through a similar experience to us. So we hope that you get something out of it. We hope that it's engaging for you. We're sorry that this is taking place over the cricket. If you're busy, got the ticker on in the background. And yeah, essentially the format is I'm going to tell you a bit of a story about me and my journey and how I got to Field to Fly, and I'll go into what Field to Fly is in a second and take you through some of my lessons and learnings, and end off with it's not my story, but it's certainly it's Field to Fly story that I'm going to share, and hopefully we start a conversation. Dale, would you like to kick off with one of your lessons first?
Sure. So I think the basis of my theme of learnings stems off this idea of what I call the hindsight bias. And everyone says everything's easy in hindsight, and when you look back, it's as if it seemed like an overnight success, when we all know an overnight success is anything but that. So I think the first lesson that I learned was ideas are easy, but the implementation is hard. So for me, it was, and a funny story is you have this idea in your head for months and months, and if you don't start or just take that leap of faith to try, an idea will just stay an idea. For my journey, 18 months ago, January last year, I entered more as an analyst in corporate finance, and 2 weeks into my job, I had the courage to go to my managing director and say, look, this is where I believe we're going. There's a gap in the market where we need to build inherently similar principles for an emerging market, and we need to build a division for this and put ourselves out there to learn and to drive adoption. And if I hadn't had that conversation, we wouldn't be sitting here today. So I think the first lesson for me is to be brave enough to take that step and not just let an idea be an idea. And you may fail, but get up and keep going. So I think, Adam, that's sort of my first one. I'm not sure if you want to bounce something similar or something along those lines that you've experienced.
Yeah, thanks, Dale. That's great. I love that you took that leap. You must have been incredibly nervous. First 2 weeks, new job, speaking to your boss, but it was fruitful, and it actually ties nicely to my first story. And we didn't plan this. This is quite a coincidence. 7 years ago, I finished articles in law, and like most people in the legal industry, decided law wasn't for me. And I decided to take a huge risk and a huge leap and leave that career and my studies and qualifications behind, much to my neurotic mother's dismay, and pursue a career in startup. And took a job at a data tech firm as an account manager, and that's where I first met the Fuel Supply founder, Daniel. And I'll tie back into Fuel Supply and Daniel. I met him at that job. Fuel Supply hadn't existed yet, but my very first lesson was that conflicts are going to arise and challenges are going to arise, and how you approach those conflicts and challenges really make a difference. So the story that I had, I was an account manager, and we were approaching the end of the year in the account management team, and it was time to reshuffle the client base across the different account managers, maybe to spark some upsell or better align or entrench us in certain industries. And I was giving up a bunch of my clients and receiving some other clients from another account manager. And this is around the time that radical candor was being spoken about in the entrepreneurial space. You probably all know about it now. Some of you have probably read the book. Anyway, at that stage, the podcast was going on. And one of the account managers had written to my boss, who's he was in the running to be the CEO, is now the CEO then, and was basically attacked my professionalism as an account manager, thought I was very loose with my clients. And she had a rather meticulous approach to hers and didn't want to give up hers, and thought she was giving me these golden clients and she was going to get these clients that were going to churn in respect. So what did my boss do? In the spirit of radical candor, he forwarded her email attacking my character to me and said, "We're starting radical candor in this company. Let's chat about this." It took us a while to overcome that, and it took me quite a while to understand her anxieties around switching up clients. But he forced us to have a very open and direct conversation with each other and with the clients, and actually it was really fruitful over time. She grew the clients that I handed over to her, and I grew the clients that I received from her, and we both learned from each other's style of account management. And had he not forced us to come together and resolve those issues, his styling definitely questionable at the time, but it did bear fruit. So I hope that's my lesson one. And I'm sure you guys are going to experience some conflicts and challenges in your entrepreneurial career. Dale, back to you.
Yeah, and I think, Adam, thanks for sharing that. I think that speaks quite well to something that I wanted to speak about is it's actually okay not to know everything, and the need to build a strong network. Inherently, entrepreneurs like to believe that they know everything and can do everything themselves. And I've got this, and and that I learned that lesson the hard way. Um, you know, taking on everything and thinking that you have to do it alone and you have to rely on yourself for everything is one of the biggest mistakes I made. It takes a toll on your health, on your performance, on your execution, on your ability to scale. And a lesson that I would take away from that is build strong networks and use the resources around you. And don't try and be an expert in everything. Where you need help, reach out for help and focus on your strengths and lean on people where you're weak. And so I think that's quite an important a lesson from me. From my journey, I had the technical and the passion, and my boss and I, we talk about the gray hair and the wild dog, and he's got the philosophy and the experience to guide me or navigate through situations that I haven't experienced myself personally. And if I hadn't consulted with him, probably would have done it in a different way that may have blown up or done damage to reputational or business risk. So I think that leans well into that is building a strong relationship and building a strong network. And I think CVVC is doing a great job of that, and not to rely and believe that you have to do everything alone.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And relationships, that's definitely my second lesson, and definitely touches on what you said now and what Gideon said at the top of this on how your customers are your one strong relationship point, and then your VCs are your other. And my next learning is the small things matter and relationships matter. And um, one thing that I really loved in another startup that I joined, this one was in the logistics space, was a fellow person in sales had just signed up a new client that she'd been working on for months and months. And we had no idea how big this client was going to be. And they went out in the first 3 months, they did 1,000 orders through our parcel network, which at that stage was pretty big for our business. And this is what she did. And I love the story. She sent them a cake to their office out in Durban with 1,000 in the numbers as candles, and then she had the hundreds and thousands sprinkles on. And just a note, and it said, "Congratulations on your first 1,000 orders, and here's to the hundreds of thousands of orders to come." So small, so cute. They've remained a client since. They grew dramatically, and I just love that. I'd never heard of that. Um, that little touch in account management, and it was brilliant, and definitely something that I've brought to sales teams that I've worked on. And then the other one is I met Daniel at one of the jobs, and he had a rocky start, and that's a story for another day, maybe over a beverage or two. And we had an instant connection, and you never know where connections are going to take you, where relationships are going to take you, and something we maintained. And now I'm working with them on the field to fly mission. So just got you never know. um, and as Dale said, you never know where a conversation with your boss or a fellow entrepreneur who might be going through something might spark an idea or spark something. So that's my second lesson.
Awesome. And I think these lessons we've spoken about are the easier ones, and I think we also need to talk about the reality of entrepreneurship and what lies behind it. And I think expecting failure is something that you need to come to terms with. Nothing is linear. It's never going to go the way that you think it's going to go. You need to be adaptable. You need to be resilient. A funny story, probably the biggest lesson I learned was 8 years ago. I was still in, I think, third year varsity or something like that. And we started, these three blockchain funds, literally one of those stories, three friends in a garage type of thing. And we were sitting at a dinner and we we went down 90% within 2 hours. Because anyone can make money in the bull market, but we were naive in thinking that without doing that deep learning, and Gideon, you spoke to that earlier, is that you need to understand and dive deep into what you're actually trying to do. Because should we have made 10x in those first few months and not gone down 90%, I could guarantee you that I wouldn't have the knowledge that I do today, and I wouldn't be in the position I am today if it wasn't for that failure and the importance of turning failure into success. I know the end of something like that is always to be the best listener in the room. It's to absorb information and learn from others. I know, Gideon, you've probably experienced something similar, so I don't know if you want to jump in here for a second or two, and maybe touch on one or two lessons that might have resonated with you here.
Yeah, sure. After listening to both of you, I mean, very interesting stories. I had a question that I wanted to ask both of you. Dale, you sort of answered it, in fact, but the question is entrepreneurship or being in a leadership role or working in a startup, all of these sort of positions, there's an involvement of risk to be able to get to that position or to be able to execute on these certain things, right? And risk doesn't always play off. You got to risk it to get the biscuit, but you don't always get the biscuit. So the question that I had is what risks have you guys taken that haven't played off in your favor, and what have you learned from that? So Dale, I think you sort of answered that. If there's something else that you can speak to, it'll be interesting to hear that. And Adam, I'll go over to you. Maybe you can mention something. I'll start off briefly, and my story is quite similar to Dale. Back in 2017, during the early stages of the bull run, a couple guys as well started a long only fund, and in the crypto space, quite aggressive, did very well very early on, 3-4x the fund very quickly. And then, we didn't really understand the space at that stage, doing our very best to try to. And then, this raging bear market came out of absolute nowhere whilst you're in your sleep pretty much. And, the fund was down significantly. So that risk didn't play off. But similar to you, Dale, it brought me into a space that I became very passionate about and wanted to learn more about. And it was certainly a big learning for me that made me go deeper down the rabbit hole, and also considered certain steps a little bit more carefully, specifically around, fund management. And when you're the custodian of investors' money, there's a certain way that you need to look into this from a compliance perspective, but also just from making sure that there's a calculated manner to which you're making certain investments. But I'm sure we all have a couple stories there. Adam, interested to hear if there's a time in your life where you've tried to risk it all and it didn't pay off.
Thanks, Gideon. So my biggest probably risk was in the job that I took just after the data tech job, just before the fuel to fly job. I was doing really well and leading the SA sales team, and I was gunning for a managerial position on the SA client base, and it was in enterprise sales. It's what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, and at the time, was really working hard and pushing, and it got to a point where my boss said, "Congratulations, you've made it to management, but it's not the position you want." And he asked me to take up a role in a different emerging division, another side of the business, that we were trying to make a second revenue stream in, more in the SME space, and completely different set of skills that I'd ever done, more digital marketing, less relationship and an enterprise-based, faster sales cycles, and really, struggled at that for a year and learned a lot. And the business actually, reached a point where they had other opportunities ahead and didn't have the resources to back different revenue sides of the business. And I had a year ago decided to give up leading the 90% revenue side of the business and focus on the 5%. And when you're in charge of such a small percentage of revenue and there's other options, you could be very vulnerable. And not to do anything with our success or performance, but our division was cut, and it put me in a situation where I was a bit unsure about my future for a while. But it led me to Fuel to Fly, and it's still early stages, but I'd say it's going really well so far. But at the time, before Fuel to Fly, it was certainly like quite nerve-wracking for a period. I had team members to consider and worry about. So that was definitely, at the time, if I could go back a year ago, even though I've learned a ton over that year of a different type of side of sales and experience, I'm not sure if I would have accepted being in a position to be potentially vulnerable in a year's time. The jury's still not out on that one, but I think I'm in a much better space now and have learned a lot, and it's definitely prepared me for other elements. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. Interesting story, and interesting perspective on on the journey that you've been through. Dale, from your side, I mean, you've mentioned a story. Perhaps you have another one.
Yeah, so I think more so something that I stick to after that is why I decided to sort of go into a more market sort of neutral role as a professional services, providing services to these industry players as opposed to being involved in day-to-day activity with protocol, is due to the life cycle of technology, and we all know about the S curve, right? Is my go-to is I don't want to be the Napster of Spotify. So Napster essentially was Spotify just too early. So again, it talks back to making sure that you dive deep into what does the end customer want? What are they looking for from a value perspective, and align your learnings and your research and your timing becomes so important, because if you think about it, Napster literally was Spotify just 10 years too early. So that's something I took out of being drastically down on money we shouldn't have been putting into this with three mates. But yeah, I mean, I think that alludes to something that I also would like as a takeaway is always to remember to separate hype versus reality. And you need to understand that there's hype around certain aspects, but you need to be mature enough to dive deeper and look beyond the hype to see the reality and real world aspects and how it can actually fit in, which again circles back to as a user or a customer. Look, it may sound cool to me, sounds amazing to go and tokenize a diamond fund, and that sounds really cool, but is that really what the end user wants? I know the technology enables it and that's the hype around it, but we need to be mature enough as entrepreneurs to actually service what our clients are looking for.
Yeah, well said. And I mean, I guess that's interesting point of view from the crypto space in general, right? Is that because it's still a speculative asset that a lot of people don't really understand, and it's sort of at this precipice where markets in general are being led by retail. With new applications like Robinhood, for example, where you can essentially manipulate the equities market as well. We've seen that with with GameStop and various others, BlackBerry and AMC and so on.
Bernie Madoff did a great job.
Exactly, and because the whole market is driven by retail, you've got a lot of really poor projects out there, and we've seen that specifically in the gaming space in crypto that are leveraging off of a hype, but there isn't a strong application there. There's no utility there. But because they've done an excellent job at leveraging hype, great at building a community and marketing the product in the same sort of narrative that seems to be that the retail community seems to latch onto, they can increase the value of their token incredibly quickly without having any real world application out there, which is interesting. And I heard on another point of view, we've seen, this is sort of a side note to the whole conversation, but we've seen how meme coins have taken off, and arguably they will always be there. And you can think of it, someone once told me, as a form of art, where it's not necessarily a scam that's always going to go to zero. Of course, most of them will, but to a certain point, it's got like the cyberpunk following, and it's art to a certain extent, right? You can argue that until the cows come home. But Adam, you've got another story that you want to probe as well.
Yeah, thanks, Gideon. The last story I wanted to share with you guys is Fuel Supply's story. So Fuel Supply started 4 years ago, lead generation space, using cold email, and using cold email as the channel because love that you can send thousands and thousands of emails and you can track every single one and then be guided by the data. And Fuel Supply started in South Africa and very soon realized that real opportunity for cold email was actually abroad, and was very nervous about taking this value proposition to the States and Europe. How can this little SA company compete with the big boys, and how will we be seen by the market? And that was a very nervous thing to do, and was certainly a big risk at the time. Definitely a lot of imposter syndrome, and I'm sure this is something that all entrepreneurs face and realize. But what I loved about Fuel Supply's story is they embraced this and decided we're going to do this, and we're going to listen to the market really hard, and we're going to listen to our clients really hard, and what the data and they tell us, we're going to adapt and we're going to grow our product very quickly, and we're just going to keep at it until we stick. This is pre-product market fit, and learned a lot and was guided by the data. And the product that Fuel Supply has now is so different to it was before it entered the market in the early stages. And we're still listening to our clients, and we're still listening to the market, and we made changes today. And it's because of those reasons that Fuel Supply is expanding and has a place for someone like me who wants to help it scale. So my big lesson and takeaway from Fuel's story is okay to not have all the answers. And it's definitely something Dale said earlier, but take those risks and be guided by your clients and be guided by your data and be adaptable to grow. And you never know where you're going to be and what success lies ahead. So that's my last lesson.
Yeah, I mean, interesting point there. And what I'm taking from both of you is that you need to focus a lot on probing the client, asking questions, and being able to iterate your product based on what the market wants and what the market's looking for. And I think at the end of it, it comes down to having a product or service that's diagnosing a problem. And I think, when you get quite close to your product or to your service, you become so gung-ho about pitching exactly that and pitching what it is that you forget to actually ask the client, what are your problems? What are you facing right now? And how can we help you? And based on that feedback, that's sort of a data set that you can start iterating your product and your service on. And through that process comes negative feedback as well, right? And that's just the nature of it. We all know what it's like, Fuel to Fly specifically, reaching out to tens of thousands of people a day, doing your super structured and personalized email. Even that has some negative feedback. So maybe Adam, back to you, and then to Dale. How do you handle, in personal capacity, but also in the industry that you're in, how do you handle negative feedback?
Yeah, Gideon, it's a great question, and look, some feedback is definitely valid, and I always try, use a mindset from one of my previous bosses of what can we learn from this? What's the lesson from this? And he's an engineer, and that mindset background kind of removes the emotion out of it, and turns it into this place where you can just gain opportunity and gain lessons. And there might not be a lesson in everything, but having that right mindset allows you to tweak and learn from that. And it's definitely something that I try to more. So there will be clients, and there will be the market that will give you feedback you don't like. Some of it there'll definitely be lessons, and some of it it's okay to disregard too, as long as you evolving and you're growing your product into something that is better serving your customers.
Dale, what about you? I mean, the nature of negative feedback is sometimes a touchy one. I'm trying to find it myself.
No.
Sometimes I bite my lip and I don't agree with it, and I look the other way. But sometimes you got to sort of digest the feedback, and it can help you improve your pitch, your product, the service, and multiple other things.
Yeah, Gideon, I think especially in what space in what space we deal in, it is very prone to constructive and non-constructive criticism, keyboard warriors versus intellectual type criticism, and that's something that I think what I've learned is we need to, again, based on our learnings and our deep dive, is believe in what we're doing and we're solving a problem. And the facts that are brought to you, or criticisms, a lot of it is based around a stigma that's been attached to this market based on human behavior that's not related to the technology, right? So a lot of the time, we obviously are very personally invested in the space, and we have to bite our lip, etc. But at the end of the day, that's your customer. And I felt that it's actually an educational issue, and that's going to take time, because if we think about the Sam's story, FTX, right? The human committed the fraud, not the technology, and people don't understand that. They'll go first to blame the tech, right? And although that criticism will come to you, you need to take the time to explain to your customer or to that person providing that, to say, listen, I'm going to help you and educate you to the true value of what underlies this technology, as opposed to a bad actor, which is not native to crypto. There's bad actors in the emergence of any new technology. If you look at the tech bubble, you look at 2008, you have people that take advantage of these emerging technologies that understand it a lot better than the public, and they abuse it. And us, people that are trying to build proper real world solutions, take the brunt of it. We take 7 steps forward and 20 steps back when some guy decides he wants to do something dumb, when it's actually not the technology or what we're trying to do, and then we have to take it upon ourselves to mend that problem. So I think it's a bit different in our space. It's a maturity thing, an educational thing, but my opinion is you take it and use it as an opportunity to what I call give that person the penny drop moment. Because if you're the face of their penny drop, or when it's like their aha moment, that is someone who's going to come to you each and every time they hear the word crypto. So that's how I deal with criticism in the space.
Yep, good points there, Dale. I guess something else that we haven't spoken about is some of the services and products that both of you offer. And from a CVVC and CB Labs perspective, we focus on investing into the Web3 ecosystem, but we're investing into entrepreneurs, we're investing into startups, and both of you serve that community. So maybe, Adam, for you to start, what exactly does Fuel to Fly do? How do you help entrepreneurs drive sales growth and get in front of the right people to market their product? And how can people get in touch with you?
Great, thanks, Gideon. So, as I said throughout, we're a lead generation service. We're in the business of bringing you leads. We use email to do that, and we use email at scale. We have a very data-driven approach to email. So we're basically, instead of getting a junior sales development rep to try and find hot leads either by phone or email or LinkedIn to feed a salesperson for meetings, why not outsource that to a business that is, the whole business is geared around that. So we've got a big data engine around that. We sit with our clients and design exactly what the prospecting strategy is. We design multiple different types of email copy to explain their business. Everything goes through our data engine. Every email is categorized, tracked, all in the end goal of getting people to respond to our email to say, yes, I want to meet you. Yes, that business sounds interesting. So for Dale and the guys at Mo, we would explain their value proposition in a very clear way over 4 different types of email. We'd send that email out to their ideal customer profile. We're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of people that match that, who are in the right target segment and the right persona. And Dale would just, his inbox would just be full of people responding to our email and saying, yes, I want to meet you, or this sounds interesting to me, please can we meet? And then Dale would do what he does best and talk to them, understand their problem, present more, and close them. And had I known about Fuel to Fly's business when I was involved in the 2 other startups earlier, I would 100% have used that service. It would have absolutely changed my sales experience in tech sales, and just being able to use that volume at scale and target businesses in need of your solution in territories that you want to break into and understand that go-to-market analysis. I think it's an absolute no-brainer for any entrepreneur or business in the startup that's ready to grow and boost their top of funnel. So that's what we do, and we love helping out new businesses. And if you need to reach me, you've got me on LinkedIn, give me a shout. I can help you out.
So essentially what you guys are doing is personalized email at scale. And as you say, if you knew about it, it would have made a big difference. So startup founders that are, at the end of the day, startup founders want to get in front of their ideal customer, or at least what they think to be their ideal customer or their target market. And if you're able to do that at scale, then you're also able to pick up data from the customer, right? So Fuel to Fly can help a startup founder engage with 100 customers that they believe to be their ideal customer set, and they're getting positive feedback, then great, they're making sales. If they're getting negative feedback, then they have the opportunity to iterate their product and double down on a new target audience that may suit their profile a little bit better, or their product a little bit better based on the data that you guys provide. Really interesting. I think a lot of
yeah, exactly right. And Gideon, you're welcome to come do some pitches for us anytime.
Well, I think it could help a lot of our portfolio companies. So I'm sure a couple of them will be listening. Dale, on your side, maybe you can touch a little bit more on the services that you offer and who your ideal customer is, and sort of like the pain point that you're solving in an industry where there aren't too many players from the legacy world that are offering services like yourself. So you're sort of in this blue ocean space where you've got the credibility of being a legacy business, but you're dealing in like a speculative, what's viewed to be a speculative technology, but what we all can agree on is going to be really transformative as it gets adopted.
Yeah, so I think in principle we future proofing the professional services business for a new asset class, right? And we've used this period of uncertainty amongst the market to build and position ourselves as, the leaders in the space. As we all know, regulation, as much as you can also argue that from cradle to grave, but that turns our services from voluntary to mandatory, right? And when a company needs, a stack of assurance where you need a proof of reserves that's adhering to a Merkle tree type uh, standard, as well as custodial controls. You need to be looking at infrastructure of hot wallets, cold wallets. How does it work? Can you account for um, these types of assets? Do you have sub ledgers that are IFRS US GAAP grade that are able to aggregate and integrate decentralized type data into a GL ledger that you can map into your traditional books and disclose in the right manner? And so essentially, as transaction happens, naturally taxable events happen. So you need someone to advise you on how to treat these things. And we have built tools to do, real time reserves to prove collateralization of asset backed tokens with 30-second intervals. We partnered with Chainlink on Oracle integrations between real world assets and what's being represented on chain. We provide Merkle tree proof of reserves for exchanges and other types of platforms. We are helping the first government tokenized bond in Africa. So we do an array of advisory assurance and your boring type stuff in the space, which is what we believe as completely necessary for adoption, especially as regulation sort of comes in. And just one point to add in is, Gideon, you'll resonate with this, is that the crypto world is very small. It's very niche, and it's really based a lot on personal brand and building that. And when it comes to things like BD, we rely a lot on those and the CVE labs ecosystems and these partnerships, etc. It would be interesting. I mean, probably a chat for another day, Adam. Is how do you adapt Fuel to Fly's approach of cold emails, etc., to such a niche market that's close knit and based on more of a reputation as brand in the space, as opposed to an array of customers that are willing to just be interested in something without understanding. So that's essentially what we're building. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn at any point, and we'll share our details after this call. But yeah, that's essentially what we're doing, is future proofing the professional services business.
Who are your ideal clients, Dale? Would you say what industry are they in, and what sort of backgrounds do they have?
So it can array from exchanges wanting to do some sort of reserve proofing, stable coins wanting to do real time visibility into fiat type reserves against what's represented on chain and that bridge. So these types of customers that are issuing tokens, if their token economics is what's being represented on chain in terms of burning, minting is actually what's in line with what the code is operating well. So I think our ideal customer is any industry player, right? It could be an acquisition where a large institution now wants to buy a industry player and they need a DD, but it's got specific crypto type element that needs knowledge to be able to do a due diligence around those types of aspects, right? Or individuals that need tax returns filed but they don't know how, or have the tools to do cost basis tracking. As I said again, your financial plumbing from a company's point of view that operates with any crypto is, are you using Excel or do you have software that is able to account for these things, and are these up to industry standards. So essentially, what we're trying to do is promote a industry best practice framework, and hopefully that we start to self-regulate, and the rest will follow, that everyone can participate in a safe manner.
And last question, Dale, and then Adam will go over to you just for last comments and summary of the call. What does the pending Bitcoin ETF mean for Moore and for the wider industry?
So I think it's the positive I found out of what's going on in the US, so albeit there aren't many, but it's starting to create a precedent for case law. And there has been unclear regulation, and for entrepreneurs to be able to build and innovate on top of this technology, they need to understand the ropes and boundaries that they are able to innovate and expand in a manner which is not going to turn around and bite them, right? So I think the precedent of case law and the actions of what's going on in the US from a regulatory perspective is not all in all bad. The ETF I think is a good indication of institutional interest. Uptick in institutional interest is the conversation I had with banks a year ago is much different to what we're having at the moment. And it shows an intent that there's a realization, or that penny drop, that this is not going anywhere, and there's an opportunity for everyone to be able to participate. So I think it is good. It's a proactive measure. It shows that it's not just going to be retail or the smaller type players. There are industry institutions that are looking to get involved, which will foster adoption and drive volume.
I think everyone's waiting for that Bitcoin ETF to hit, right? I know Cointelegraph released an article accidentally, obviously from bad information, that the ETF had been approved, and on the back of that, the Bitcoin price shot up. I stand to be corrected, but between 5 and 10%, very, very quickly, and then they retracted the article and removed it. So it's going to be interesting to see how the market reacts. I don't think that the price is factored in just yet, but who knows? Who knows in this asset class? Adam, back to you from Fuel to Fly. Maybe some last comments on the theme of today's discussion. And also any last thoughts or summary from you?
Yeah, thanks, Gideon. My last comments are that just to round up, that relationships matter. These things take time, and have an open mindset to learning from each other, and to learning from the market, and to learning from your customers. And you never know where this is going to take you, and don't be scared to take risks. If Dale didn't take the risk in the first 2 weeks, who knows where he'd be in more. If I didn't decide to leave law, who knows where I would be now. And as long as you're listening to your customers, and you're being driven by data, and you believe in what you're doing, you'll get there. And yeah, just thanks so much for bringing us together. It's been super interesting and been a great process. So thank you.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks, Adam, and thanks for joining us. We'll be streaming this live on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we'll go into all of those. We're just gonna get Dale back to give his last comments, but we'll put all the details there from everyone, so that you can get in touch with Fuel to Fly or more. And then one point from us is that we are coming to the end of our application process for our next acceleration program. That cohort will be kicking off in March next year, and applications close within the next 2 weeks. So if you are a startup in the Web3 space, wherever you are in the world, we have a 12-week program that's coming up next year in March, with the opportunity to get investment from us, which is an offer of $135,000. and then going through a 12-week program focused on, other than the MBA stuff, of course, everything involved with blockchain and giving you access to the ecosystem, and also a week in Switzerland for our bootcamp week in the Crypto Valley. And Dale, we'll hand over to you. That's sayonara from me, and Dale, for you to just end off and give us your last comments.
Awesome. Thanks, Gideon. Yeah, from our side, if you've got any questions, or whether it be related to the services we provide, or just general sort of advice, always open to helping. Just wanted to thank CV Labs and CVVC for today, and Adam, thanks so much for your time. It's been really great to have you and share some of our blunders and our stories, and look into an authentic, real view of what the journey looks like. A lot of the time, people see it to be as this magnificent, looks glamorous from the outside, but don't realize what goes on in the back. But yeah, thank you very much for today. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dale, for being our ecosystem partner and for more to support the South African and African blockchain ecosystem. And of course, to everyone else that helped put this together. Thanks to Fuel to Fly and Adam, and of course, Stacey, our producer, for putting together the show. So that's it from us, everybody. We'll see you soon. Ciao for now.